After a white supremacist rally in Charlottesville turned deadly, the country is struggling to reconcile the right to free speech with the worst excesses of hate speech. And Boston is facing the prospect of a similar scene next weekend. On Saturday, confrontations between white power groups and some counter-protesters turned violent. And 32-year-old Heather Heyer was killed when a man drove a car into a crowd. 20-year-old James Alex Fields now faces a charge of second-degree murder, and the Justice Department has opened a civil rights investigation into Heyer's death. As Democrats and Republicans denounced the rally's bigotry and hatred, President Donald Trump initially took a different tack, saying he saw hate and violence on many sides. Today, amid mounting pressure, the president changed his approach.
Racism is evil, and those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans.
That denunciation comes as organizers plan similar rallies across the country. They're billed as free speech rallies, but look a lot like racist provocations. In fact, a similar event is planned for Boston Common on Saturday, raising questions about who's going to participate, who will show up to protest, and whether the city can keep things from turning violent. Joining me now are First Amendment attorney Rob Birchie, a partner of Prince LaBelle, and Sophia Hall, an attorney with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and Economic Justice. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Sophia, let me start with you. You wrote a letter, along with several other individuals, which I initially saw described as a request for a postponement of Saturday's rally. Then I actually read the letter itself, and it seemed to me like something a little bit different. Do you want to postpone, or do you want a clearly articulated safety plan, or both?
So we at the Lawyers Committee, with a diverse group, or coalition rather, of partners, have really urged the city to look into a public safety or an emergency strategy around this potential rally on Saturday. You know, some may say that these incidents are isolated to the South, but Boston has a history and has seen racial violence at its best during our busing issues. And the reality is, we need to be prepared for what might be an unprecedented issue, and we need to make sure that the public feels safe so that they can decide whether or not they want to come out.
You made that request today, correct?
We issued that letter early this morning.
Early this morning. Could the city do what you're saying the city should do in time for the rally to occur on Saturday?
That's not clear to me, and the reality is, if it did occur, it would likely be a very hasty job. We just want to ensure that the public is safe. We at the Lawyers Committee have had a lot of constituents contact our office and tell us that they're concerned. They're in deep fear of some of the racial violence that they saw occur in Charlottesville. And they question whether or not Boston can be another Charlottesville and what they can do to keep themselves safe.
What have you heard back from the city so far?
As of right now, we've simply been sort of assured that the police department is going to be involved if the rally does occur, and that the strategy, whatever that might be, is ongoing.
Rob Birchie, I got somewhat confused this afternoon listening to the press conference that Mayor Marty Walsh and Police Commissioner Evans, Governor Baker, and others had to discuss this event. I couldn't tell, based on the mayor and the police commissioner's comments, if they are planning to let this rally proceed or not. The mayor was talking like they are not, like they want to find a way of derailing it. The commissioner like it's a done deal and they just have to manage it. Is there any firm legal ground for the city to keep this from happening that would not be a violation of the would-be protesters' First Amendment rights?
Yeah, I didn't hear the mayor saying he wanted to keep this from happening, although in response to one question, he did say something, "I'd love to convince them not to come," or something like that, which felt to me like about the closest they came. I don't think there is any grounds unless there's grounds on the same neutral criteria that are applied to any other demonstration or protest or assembly of people, and that would be the rules of the permitting system in Boston.
Are there any, and you know, a lot of people, I think, myself included, believe that we totally get First Amendment law and First Amendment principles, but frequently we don't. What about the notion that the speech that might be delivered at the rally on Saturday from the organizers could be incitement to violence, that they could be urging violent action taken against members of different racial communities or ethnic communities? Is that potentially an area where the First Amendment, First Amendment, thank you, where the First Amendment is circumscribed and the ability to say whatever you want is actually not in effect?
Well, I'd like to say first, one thing that struck me over the weekend and again today is that nobody really is coming out and saying these people do not have the right to express their views. That in some ways is a sea change. That's something new, and it says our country has really accepted the First Amendment as part of our DNA. And as a First Amendment lawyer, I take some pride and happiness in that. The First Amendment is not absolute. You're absolutely right. And under the Brandenburg against Ohio test that went to the Supreme Court in 1969, you cannot utter words that are meant to directly incite imminent violence and that have that effect. It's a very hard test to meet.
Is it that hard a test when we just had 3 people die, one of them because her group was targeted? We just had 3 people die at a similar event in Charlottesville. Wouldn't that make it easier to reach that bar?
Well, I want to be careful how I say this, but I'm not sure that those incidents occurred as a result of anyone preaching violence. Those were violent incidents that occurred in the course of a conflict of 2 parties in a demonstration.
Sophia, you also are an attorney. Where do you come down on this? Rob is a First Amendment specialist. Do you agree that there's really no firm legal grounds on which the city could keep this from proceeding?
So at the Lawyers Committee, we focus on discrimination based on race and national origin. That's our focus. The reality here is that racial violence did just occur on Saturday, that Boston could be another Charlottesville, and that without the proper steps taken, the reality is people just don't know what to expect. And that's a big concern. If we're going to have a rally on Saturday, it's the public, the city's responsibility to ensure that there's a proper strategy in place and that people are going to be safe.
It's probably worth highlighting here a couple points. First, the organizers of this Saturday event have claimed that they have been inaccurately linked to the Charlottesville rally. They put out a statement on August 12th saying, "We are not in any way associated with the organizers of the Charlottesville rally. This was a lie and blatant attempt at defamation. There has," that was their word, "been threats made against our lives already, and we'll be contacting Boston PD." Also worth noting that while I think there's broad unanimity around the country that the ideology purported by the rally organizers in Charlottesville is especially loathsome and beyond the pale, that there was this other group, what's the right way to say it? It's Antifa, I never quite know how to say it, who I think of as anarchists to a large extent, who have mobilized to clash with these white supremacists. So there's a sort of a dual threat of violence, right?
I mean, what I continue to hear, no matter what we talk about or what lens we use to look at this issue, is that violence could potentially occur on all fronts, from multiple parties for multiple reasons. And that, I think, says that our primary focus needs to be a comprehensive emergency plan, that if this rally is going to occur, then the public needs to know that they can be safe.
I agree 100% with Sophia. I think that's a critical issue. But I don't think that can be the reason why you ban the protest from occurring in the first place. The test of the First Amendment is a freedom for the thought that we hate. And now we're being confronted with a test in our city, and we've got to rise to the challenge.
If we all agree at this table, and I'm guessing that we do, that this does in fact represent a strain of thought that we hate, how should people who feel the same way manifest their distaste if this protest occurs? Because I think for some people there's an urge to, okay, I'm going to show up, I'm going to be part of a big show of opposition to this. I want to be near these people to show them that I reject what they stand for. But at the same time, there is, I think, among some organizers and maybe some counter-protesters, the group I mentioned before, a hunger for violence. So what's the best way, and I'm asking you all, kind of not as attorneys but as humans, what's the best way to manifest your opposition to this sort of thing? Is it to stay away and ignore it? Is it to show up and be forceful in your opposition? What do you think?
It's certainly to speak. I mean, the First Amendment is about speaking out, and we need to show these hate mongers that they have no power here.
Sophia, what do you think?
Social media could be one way to do that.
I mean, I certainly agree that we at the Lawyers Committee would encourage everyone to take a stance against discrimination, right, and any sort of hateful rhetoric. We've seen since the election such a rise or an uptick in hate speech. My understanding is that Massachusetts is the 4th highest state of reported hate crimes in the country. This is something that everyone should be speaking out against because it affects all of us.
All right. Sophia Hall, Rob Birchie, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.